Recorded Books presents a Lone Star audio production. The Texas Rangers, Volume 1, Wearing the Cinco Peso, 1821 through 1900, by Mike Cox. This unabridged recording is narrated by Jonathan Hogan and directed by Abigail McHugh. This book is copyrighted 2008 by Mike Cox. This recording is copyrighted 2009 by Recorded Books, producer and publisher of Lone Star Audio, celebrating the work of great writers from Texas. This book opens with the following note on the title. Only 10 days after Texas declared its independence from Mexico on March 2, 1836, George C. Childress, a signer of that declaration, offered a resolution to the General Convention proposing that a single star of 5 points be recognized as the peculiar emblem of Texas. Childress's resolution also stipulated that every officer and soldier of the Army and members of this convention and all friends of Texas be requested to wear it on their hats or bosoms. History doesn't record who, when, or where, but at some point, a Texas Ranger, perhaps adhering to Childress's measure, pulled his long knife and carved a star in a silver Mexican 8-real piece. The Mexican government didn't begin minting silver Cinco Pesos until 1947, but it produced 2 other silver denominations earlier, an 8-real coin and a 1 peso coin. The story may even be apocryphal, but a photograph taken in 1888 of Ranger Walter Durbin shows what has come to be called a star in the wheel badge on his chest. Eventually, as Rangers evolved from Indian fighters, Comanches and other hostile tribes demanded no proof of authority from Texans with guns. To law enforcement officers, the star in wheel badge grew in popularity among Rangers. In addition to carrying a folded paper warrant of authority, some frontier battalion members paid out of their own pocket for a badge fashioned by jewelers. The state didn't provide standardized official badges to Rangers until the 1930s, and not until 1962 did Texas Rangers begin wearing badges crafted from genuine Cinco Peso pieces. Since then, Rangers have come to refer to their service to Texas as wearing the Cinco Peso.
Preface. My late grandfather, L.A. Wilkie, blazed several of the trails I have followed. He began his writing career as a Texas newspaper reporter during the days of the Mexican Revolution, and then moved on to freelance writing. I hired on with the newspaper for the first time during the social revolution of the late 1960s, and eventually started peddling stories to magazines and later writing books. The urge to tell stories must be an inherited trait. I spent many hours sitting in Granddad's home office, listening to him reflect on his newspaper days and the colorful characters he encountered, including some famous Texas Rangers. The mental picture I have is of him turned around from his typewriter, with thumbs twiddling over an ample stomach, as he embarked on an always interesting recollection. As I listened, my focus often settled on the considerable collection of Texas-related books on the shelves behind him. One of those books had a yellow and blue dust jacket. The spine held its partial title, The Texas Rangers, followed by the single word Webb and the name of the publisher, Houghton Mifflin Company. Written in the early to mid-1930s by Walter Prescott Webb, a Texas historian and longtime University of Texas professor, the book stood for decades as the definitive Ranger history. My granddad, who had personally known some of the Rangers who play prominent roles in Webb's book, had read this first edition and made notes in its margins. Later, of course, I also absorbed the book. It is quite readable, if at times racist, but Webb's history drops deader than an outlaw with a Ranger bullet in his heart with the creation of the Texas Department of Public Safety in 1935. The book ends with Webb's incorrect prediction that the formation of the new agency marked the end of the Rangers. Webb intended to update his book, but his death in a traffic accident in 1963 ended that hope. 2 years later, the University of Texas brought it back into print with a ghost-written foreword by President Lyndon B. Johnson, but made no attempt to revise a history then more than 3 decades out of date. In 1985, after spending nearly 20 years as a newspaper staff writer, I was fortunate enough to be hired by the DPS as Public Information Officer. As the law enforcement agency spokesman for the next 15 years, I got to meet and become friends with many Rangers. In 1990, I wrote a Ranger history for young readers. After writing 2 collections of nonfiction tales about the Rangers, I decided in 1999 to take on Webb and write the history of the Rangers from the beginning through 1935 to modern times. I am an independent historian, not an academic. While this book is the result of years of research into everything from official documents, correspondence, and early newspaper coverage, to theses and dissertations and unpublished manuscripts, I have tried portraying the history of the Texas Rangers through storytelling. As often as possible, I have included the Rangers' own words or other contemporary accounts. And what a story I found to tell. Essentially, the Rangers evolved from a volunteer Indian fighting force in 1821 to a paramilitary arm of government in 1835 to 1836 to a frontier law enforcement agency in 1874. The continuing evolution of the Rangers into the 20th and 21st centuries will be the focus of the second volume of this book. The Ranger tradition in Texas is a product of both American and European influences. In something of an irony, since Rangers sometimes were pitted against Mexicans, part of their tradition traces to Spanish colonial law enforcement in Texas. Rangers also learned the hard way some things about fighting from the early Indian tribes who laid claim to various parts of Texas. Texas did not invent rangering, but as a native son, I like to think we improved on it quite a bit. As I say elsewhere in this book, the reality and mythology of the Rangers and
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.